Karl Marx's Dialectical Materialism is easily the most influential political theory of all times. Dialectical materialism is also known as historical materialism, scientific socialism, and modern communism. Dialectical materialism inspired several revolutions in 20th century, notably the Russian Revolution of 1917 and the 1949 Chinese Revolution, which created the People's Republic of China. The theory also inspired socialist form of government in several South American, Asian, and Eastern European countries. The post-World War II welfare state in Western Europe rose primarily to counter the challenge of Marxism. The theory of dialectical materialism was expounded by Karl Marx in his book Das Kapital, which was originally published in German language, as Marx himself was a German, and which was translated into English as The Capital. Its first edition was published in 1867. George S. Wine, in his book A History of Political Theory, says that dialectical materialism rested on three foundations. Number one, increasing working class consciousness in Europe. Number two, 19th century liberalism, against which Marx reacted, and the ideas of the 19th century German philosopher Hegel, which Marx reinterpreted while retaining their essential meaning. Industrial Revolution, which started in Europe in 18th century, exploited labor through appalling working conditions, long working hours, and subsistence wages. The exploitation forced industrial workers to press for their rights, which led to increased government attention towards labor plight. On the other hand, liberal thinkers in the 19th century, notably J.S. Mill, saw an essential harmony of interest among the working class and capitalists. According to the 19th century liberal thinkers, the conflict between the two could be addressed through pro-worker legislation, which included fixing maximum working hours, minimum wages, and improving the overall working conditions. The third major influence on Marx was the philosophy of Hegel. Hegel, who was also a German philosopher, stated that history and social evolution takes place through conflict in the realm of both ideas and facts. Every idea and every system, which Hegel called thesis, breeds its opposite or antithesis. In time, both thesis and antithesis merge into a synthesis which creates its own thesis, its own antithesis, and so on. This Hegel called the dialectical movement of history, or simply dialectic. So Hegel's dialectic can be explained with this diagram. The absolute monarchy is the thesis. In absolute monarchy, the king's power or the monarch's powers are unlimited. So there is one man's rule without any constitutional or legal limits. Its antithesis is democracy, where not one person but the majority rules. In time, absolute monarchy and democracy make a synthesis, and their synthesis may be called constitutional monarchy, in which the king rules but there are serious checks on his power. Constitutional monarchy is at present in vogue in several European countries, notably in the United Kingdom. According to Hegel, dialectical movement of history is both irreversible and predetermined. However, Hegel believed in the primacy of ideas or thinking over material forces. That is why he was an idealist. And for Hegel, nation or the state is the engine of dialectic or engine of the movement of history. Now, keeping these three features, now we will introduce the dialectical materialism of Karl Marx. According to Marx, conflict or dialectic is the driving force of both history and society. So here he agrees with Hegel. However, in contrast with Hegel, he believes in the primacy of material forces over ideas. That is why his theory is called dialectical materialism. Marx himself once stated that in Hegel, the dialectic stands on its head. Dialectical materialism turned it right way up. Social class in Marx is the engine of conflict and the engine of change, not the state or nation. And according to Marx, there are only two classes in society: those who own the means of production or the bourgeois, and those who provide their labor or the proletariat. So there are those who own the means of production, the business class, the landlords, and second class is the working class, the laborer or the peasants. According to Marx, European history had culminated in the rise of the proletariat, which would become the dominant class. So that is why his theory is also called historical materialism. Marx believed in the economic foundations of society. For him, ideology, religion, social and political institutions and relationships are determined by economic forces. So this can be illustrated with this diagram, that every society has economic foundations, and it is on these economic foundations that the social superstructures or superstructure is built, which comprises ideas, norms, social institutions and social relationships. And the superstructure is determined by the foundations. So the purpose of the superstructure is to realize the economic goals that the society sets for itself. Marx divides economic forces into relations of production and forces of production. Relations of production are the social and legal relations between people involved in production process, between landlord and tenant, and between capitalist and the industrial worker. Relations of production also include laws, regulations, political system that affect production process. And for Marx, relations of productions are means of exploitations. Forces of productions are which make production possible. This is what we presently call the factors of production, which includes human labor, capital, equipment and technology, and raw materials and components. So according to Marx, relations of productions resist change. So they are conservative, while the forces of productions are dynamic. Generally there is a cooperation between the two, but at times there is a lag between the two, and this causes conflicts which leads to unrest and violence and possibly revolution. Marx believes in the unavoidability of class conflict. So contrary to the liberal thinkers of the 19th century, Marx believed that the inter-class interests can never be reconciled. That is, the interest of the workers and the capitalist can never be reconciled. Therefore, Marx believed in the inevitability of worker or socialist revolution, ushering in a classless society. The task of the philosopher is to provide workers with understanding of the historical process and a plan for the revolution. So revolution is inevitable. However, the job of the philosopher or the thinker or the mentor is to provide workers or his followers with the understanding of the historical process and a plan for the revolution. Therefore, Marx's approach is both evolutionary and revolutionary. Marx also made a distinction between political and social revolutions. Political revolution transfers power from one class to another, but exploitation continues. Social revolution, on the other hand, will end classes, and once classes are ended, there won't be any exploitation. So if we go by Marx's distinction, then some of the great revolutions in history, like the Russian Revolution, the French Revolution, or the Chinese Revolution, They are only political revolution and they are not social revolutions. So this is how Marx's historical materialism unfolds itself, which culminates in a classless society. First, there is the age of serfdom, which gives rise to the age of feudalism. The age of feudalism is followed by the age of capitalism, which is the current age. Capitalism will be overthrown eventually through a proletariat revolution, and then there will be a dictatorship of the proletariat, during which conditions will be made for the establishment of a fully socialist or communist society, and eventually the state will end or wither away and a classless society will come into being. Classless society will be based on the principle of from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. So everyone will be asked to perform the task for which he possesses the necessary expertise, and once he has performed the task, then all his needs will be fulfilled. And there will be no strict division of labor. People can switch between the jobs. I trust you like this video. Please subscribe to my channel Wisdom of Life. Thanks for watching.